Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Being Patient Perspectives. I'm Deborah Kahn, founder of Being Patient. I'm really excited. We are going to do a talk today on MCI because I can't tell you how many people write us and say, what does this mean? Does this mean that I'm going to get Alzheimer's disease? So it's really great today that we have Leah Fisher with us. Leah has been diagnosed with MCI. She's navigated this journey, and we're looking to her today for some perspective. So Leah, thank you so much for joining us.
Pleasure.
Okay, so let's start pre-diagnosis. I want to talk to you a little bit about when signs started for you that maybe your memory or cognition wasn't what it used to be.
Well, looking back, I would say there were whispers of it right after menopause. I remember a mess on the counter when I poured coffee into a full cup of coffee. So there were little signs, but I would say about 7 years ago, I became concerned. A lot of flakiness. I'm somebody who hangs on to my stuff and is fastidious about keeping appointments. I left a sweater at a concert. I swam in a lake and left my wet bathing suit behind a tree. And on an international flight, the flight attendant held up a passport and said someone dropped their passport in the aisle. And I didn't have to look to know it was going to be mine. So those were some of the early signs.
But those, sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, but those signs are, I mean, we've all had those moments. Is it because for you that was really uncharacteristic? Is that why it was occurring to you that maybe something was wrong?
Uncharacteristic, and they happen more often. And that's one of the tricky things about MCI. It looks a lot like what somebody referred to as CRS syndrome, which is can't remember shit. And so if you are somebody who likes to dismiss things, it's easy to dismiss. Friends will say, oh my God, I do the same thing. It's quantity and it's how out of character it is for how you usually are. Those were the things that signaled it.
So, Leah, you were saying that you have, it coincided with menopause. I mean, one of my pet peeves in the industry is I feel like a lot of women are told, oh, it's just menopause, right? When it's actually not just menopause, especially when you're at that age, right? We know fluctuations of hormones can impact memory and cognition. And that's why the attribution to menopause seems logical. But from my perspective, what I found strange and what I continue to find strange is that women who are told it's just menopause, it takes them to say, no, it's not, or there's not, no, this is not menopause, right? Or to seek 2 or 3 opinions before they really get to the heart of the issue. So talk to me a little bit about that, because it sounds like your cognitive problems were coming at a time when you were menopausal. So how did you attribute it to menopause, or how did you know to look beyond that?
You know, I have this expression that has served me well, and it is, I know what I know. And increasingly, no, I didn't know at menopause. I didn't know what's normal, what's abnormal. It was certainly abnormal for me, but it was abnormal for a lot of people. And so it was about 7 years ago that it began to hit critical mass. I went and got an evaluation and was told that I was functioning way better than people my age, and that the only sign was that I thought something was amiss. And I left thinking, glad to know I'm functioning better, but I know what I know.
But you knew for you were not at optimal functioning.
I'm attuned to myself. It was off, not hugely off, but off. And a year later, I went back and was told I was functioning way better than people my age. And the only sign was that I thought something was amiss. And I know what I know.
So, okay, so a year went by when you were like, I'm not sure something's wrong. And they're like, no, you're functioning fine. And then you came back a year later and they're like, wow, you're really functioning way above what people your age are. So you're fine. And then what?
Well, then came COVID. So I didn't get checked out for those 2 years. And then things really started to change that I could not attribute to CRS syndrome. I was typing and I couldn't remember where the L key was. Okay. I was working on my income tax and I was trying to multiply 4 by 7 and I couldn't remember. You know, that's what, second grade, third grade. And then I went to type maybe and I spelled it wrong, didn't look right. And I tried again and that didn't look right. And it took 5 tries to get maybe. And at that point, it's like, I don't care what the tests say, something's really wrong. And that's when I got the MCI diagnosis.
So what did it take to get that diagnosis? I mean, you're performing over people your age or on these cognitive assessments, which I agree aren't designed. It's not one size fits all, right? That's why it's so important, I think, to have a baseline so you have a you can compare. But what did it take now? Now you're okay, it's COVID. So what is it, 4 years later since that first appointment, or?
Yes, it was
It's about 4 years later.
after 4 years.
Did you go back to the same doctor or what did you do?
I went back to the same institution. I had gone because I wanted a baseline. And it wasn't difficult. I mean, my initial doctor had moved out of the country. There was a new doctor, but getting the test was very straightforward. The testers I've always found to be charming and responsive and just nice people. So that in itself was not upsetting. You know, I just find that temperamentally, there are people who are really curious and they want to know. There are people who will wait and to find out on an as needed basis. And then there are people who work really hard to not know what other people see and know. And I'm one of the curious ones, so I wanted to know.
So what did that look like though? How did that translate? So you have another doctor and you're saying, I really believe something is wrong. Did they give you the same cognitive assessments?
Exactly.
And then did you score lower this time?
Definitely.
Okay. So they could see after 2 rounds of testing that now something was showing up on these tests.
Right. And probably it had been progressing during the 2 years that I didn't visit.
Right.
But
so you get a diagnosis of mild cognitive impairment, MCI, and that is incredibly typical of anyone beginning this journey. Then what? What did you do next?
well, just in terms of responding to that diagnosis, mostly my first reaction was relief. Oh, good, the outside world has met my inside world. And there was something very reassuring about that. And then the other
That's
part
a really interesting thing to say. And I want to actually delve a little bit further. Is it because in some ways, maybe you thought you were kind of going crazy thinking something was wrong, but it wasn't validated, or why? Why do you say that?
because I knew what I knew. And
Trust your instincts.
well, you feel seen when somebody says, yeah, the tests are matching what you believe is going on. And then there was also oh my God, this is real. This is true. And what does MCI mean?
So what were you told MCI means by your doctor?
What I was told was that it put me at much higher risk of developing Alzheimer's in the future. And I read up about it as well, and it was clear I was at much higher risk. So at that point, it was vague. That doctor also said if I wanted to, there was a clinical trial that would let me have a PET scan, and the PET scan would indicate if there was amyloid anywhere in my brain. And so I said, well, sure, okay. And then I was terrified. I mean, the waking up in the night, shaking, terrified. And my wise daughter said to me, just because something's available doesn't mean you have to do it. So I called and I canceled the appointment, and the shaking stopped instantly.
So it was the anxiety that there could actually be a biomarker in your brain that should tell you that was is that why you were very anxious?
Well, yeah, I mean, looking at my face is one thing, looking inside my brain is another. 6 months later, the same doctor made the same offer. And by then I felt good. Yeah, I'll go for it. And they found amyloid in every lobe of my brain.
So at that point, do they change the diagnosis, or is it still considered MCI?
They didn't change the diagnosis. I did.
So do you,
Even though they said, you're at very high risk, I told my daughter and my husband that I had Alzheimer's disease and believed it. And needless to say, they cried. And I had to think, who will I tell? Who won't I tell? Which I think is just a huge issue for anybody, either with MCI or the next diagnosis. And I blurred those two. I just sort of slid from understanding MCI to, if there's all this in my brain, I clearly have made the slide into Alzheimer's disease.
So what happened next? Did you participate in the clinical trial?
Well, the clinical trial was simply about having
whether you had plaque in your brain. It was a diagnostic trial.
The trial was, how do doctors do any better a job of working with patients if they know about that amyloid? So it was actually a study for the neurologists, and they used people like me to give them the material. Okay, now the doctor has the diagnosis involving amyloid. What do they do the same or differently?
Did you feel like you got the right type of information or participating in that type of trial? I mean, how did your doctor communicate to you that indeed, and was there the option to maybe not find out, or obviously you wanted to know?
I wanted to know, or I wouldn't have done it. No, the doctor put the pictures of my brain up on the screen and showed me all the amyloid, and I heard blah, 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 blah. And it was that made me make that slide. And I was that person for a little while, and I shared that. The issue for me was who to tell and who not to tell. And I think that's a big issue for people.
And that's because of the stigma that's involved for people. Is that why?
Well, stigma kind of is a word. It was really who's going to step closer to me and who's going to step back, and who's going to see me as the same me I've always been, and who is going to, at some level, write me off. And once you've told someone, you can't untell them. So what if I call that wrong? I didn't want to be treated like an it.
Yeah. I'm so glad that you're saying that, because I think that's a big piece of this for a lot of people with diagnosis. Like, don't treat me differently. I'm still me. And I mean, if you think about it, if somebody, like, I don't know, breaks their arm or something like that, we'll acknowledge it and say, oh, I'm so sorry you got injured, but then we move on, right? We don't dwell on the fact the person has a broken arm. But I could understand why with the brain, the worst part probably, because you feel that you're experiencing something, but you're still you, right?
Totally. Yes. the good parts work just as well as they always did.
Leah, what did you do before? I mean, well, tell me a little bit about your profession, and I mean, you're obviously a highly intelligent person. So tell me a little bit about what your life was before this diagnosis.
Sure. I was a psychotherapist. Um, and
Therefore, very aware of your inner feelings as well, right?
yes, but I came that way from the factory, with that being very attuned. Um, and at the time of that diagnosis, I was in the middle of writing a book, which I just finished. But knowing where the keys on the keyboard are and knowing how to spell maybe is really relevant to writing a book. I'd love to tell a very sweet story about letting people know. Uh, I have a group of couples that we've been camping with for 38 years. And I decided to let them know this summer. And I said I wanted a senior wisdom circle, and they put their camping chairs in a circle. And I told them about my diagnosis and said, it looks like I may be the first one in this group to develop dementia. And what they did was just remarkable. I knew they were people who would step forward. One by one, they came over and gave me a hug, no talking. And then one by one, they went to my husband and they gave him a hug, which I just found very moving.
Oh, I just got chills. That's really
And then they sat down and asked the most wonderful questions I've ever been asked. They asked, how is this affecting your marriage? And I said, it's brought us closer than ever. It's really a now or never moment. And both my husband and I chose now. And so we're much closer. And then they asked, what do you need from us? And I said, to keep on loving me, whatever happens. And to try really hard not to change how you relate to me.
You know,
yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
They asked me one more question, which I can't remember.
Well, I have to say that is so helpful to other people, like even myself, even though, I'm with my mom now in the later stage of Alzheimer's disease, but that is so helpful because it made me remember the mistake that I made when she first got a diagnosis. And I remember, my mom took care of the finances of the house, and they have like an income property and everything. And I remember we were sitting around the dining room table and we were kind of talking over her, not on purpose, just because my sister and I were starting to take over some responsibility, and the anger that she felt was just so eye-opening. And I think what you just said just encapsulates exactly what all of us should remember, which is what you're saying to us. It's like, I am still me. I am not different, and I think that's, you just so beautifully just brought that up and made us, it's truly an aha moment. The other thing I want to say is, now I've interviewed hundreds of people with diagnosis, right? I've talked to a lot of people. I will say one of the main constants that I find is people who have a diagnosis do much better when they have a supportive partner. And I love that gesture of like hugging your husband too, right? And that's so important. And I don't have science. I just talk to a lot of people, and it feels like that one constant is a supportive partner. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a spouse. It could be someone else, but it's a constant source of support and love that makes it I feel like the decline is less, actually, if you have that.
It's interesting.
I
think I found that the best coping skill for this time, especially with MCI, is learning how to be calm in the face of uncertainty. there's so much not knowing with MCI. Is it going to stay stable and it's not going to be a problem? Am I so old that I'm going to die from something else and it's not going to be a problem? Will it progress quite slowly, which has been the case for me, thank goodness, so slowly that I can be thinking ahead, preparing, even being kind of funny about it. Or is it going to slide fast into a diagnosis none of us would like to have?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, your awareness about where you are, and it's incredible. The reason why you just heard something is because I'm queuing up. One of the things I want people to see is a lovely, lovely song. And I'm going to play a little bit and then we're going to talk about this. But you wrote a song to address what your experience is with MCI. So I want to play a little bit of that. And then we're going to talk about what that meant to you. Actually, maybe I should just share my screen so that we can look at the, I don't know if you have the lyrics on here, but I'll just do that quickly. Because I just absolutely love that. Oh, wait, I have to figure out how not to show everyone on my screen as I'm doing this. But I love that you wrote a song. I think it's incredible. Okay. So
I co-wrote a song.
you co-wrote it.
Yeah, they're with the singer-songwriter.
Right. There's a singer-songwriter, but this is basically your experience, right? With MCI. Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to just play a little bit. We won't play the whole thing right now. We can post the link in this talk so that other people can hear it. But let's listen. This is the song lyrics by Leah Fisher. Oops. Why aren't we hearing it? Sorry. Are you hearing it?
No, not yet.
Okay, hold on 1 second. I don't know why my volume is not coming through.
You need the computer volume as well as the.
Yeah, I have both on. I don't know why it's not playing all of a sudden because I delete. Hold on, let me just turn it one more time. Sorry, guys. It's worth the wait, I promise.
I counted back by 7.
Can you put it on the screen?
And on an old time clock. My cognitive impairment at last pronounced the dark. Will blanks and tangles be my fate? My question started brewing. Just watch and wait, the dark advised. And so that's what I'm to bring. I find I search all morning for the glasses sitting on my head. Leave my coffee on my coffee and my keys under the bed. Familiar words evaporate as I arrive mid-phrase, then finally show up grudgingly after several days. Or I'm making soup for dinner. It's one you like, my dear. My knives are sharp, my hands are washed. Ingredients all here. But though I still can chop an onion with a chef's panache, it's the peels I'm sauteing. I toss the onions in the trash.
That's lovely, Leah. Okay, let's talk a little bit about this. Tell me a little bit about how it even occurred to you to write a song. Were you a songwriter before?
Absolutely not. I'm in a Alzheimer's support group, an early diagnosis support group through the Alzheimer's Association. And during our meetings, I kept, this phrase kept coming up, which is, I will love you always if I don't forget. And it kept coming up and coming up. And I mean, this was about finding the humor in this very unfunny situation. So I knew the singer-songwriter, and I asked her if she would help me make a song about MCI and living with uncertainty. You didn't play the chorus, but the chorus is really the funniest part. And it was finding creativity in the midst of uncertainty. And to me, that's been the coping strategy. And a silver lining of a horrible diagnosis is a hard thing to believe, but there have been some very delicious things that have happened because of this. And my writing a song, having never written a song, is one of them. Getting closer to my husband after all these years is another. And doing things like this, speaking with you, is probably the most important one, that I'm getting to turn what's happening to me into a gift by letting other people know about it.
So I want to say something about the creativity, because, you know, when I first launched Being Patient, the phrase that kept coming up again and again by a lot of doctors in the profession is like, an Alzheimer's brain no longer can learn. And I've learned that's complete BS, right? Because we see the brain flourish with creativity, and the disease doesn't impact creativity. And it's amazing. I mean, we've had people on who now never knew that they were painters, and have, you know, Rebecca Chopp, she unleashed the painter within. And I was like, do you come up from a family of artists? She's like, no, not at all. She's painting beautiful portraits. You know, for you, it's songwriting. I mean, it's not easy. Not everyone could write a song. I don't think I could write a song, you know, and so the creative brain is not impacted by memory, cognition, and memory deficits due to Alzheimer's or mild cognitive impairment. And I'm so glad that you brought that up, because I think that's a really important thing to focus on. It's like, okay, maybe you were having memory lapses with spelling or misplacing things, but then there's this whole other area that's being unleashed. That's amazing. You know, whoever knew you could write a song before, right? You're leaving something on this planet. So I think that's amazing. And I'm so glad that you brought that.
Let me just modify it by saying I can't write a song. The creative part was having this slap happy phrase and thinking to say to a songwriter, let's collaborate and make something that can amuse people while informing them.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so what would you say to people who are just entering this journey? What would you know, what you know now, what is your advice to them?
Well, just in terms of personally, what I would say to someone with a fresh diagnosis is, how can I be of help to you? So that would be where I'd start. And the other thing I think I would say somewhere along the line is learning to not catastrophize where it's going, and to not pretend nothing is happening, but to be able to hold both possibilities at the same time is a coping strategy, a spiritual practice, and will make you a bit more tranquil as you live with the not knowing.
Yeah, that's really great advice. We have a question. It must be someone who knows you're writing a book, because they've asked, what is your book about? What are you writing?
I'm writing a memoir that is a travel memoir and a marriage memoir. 15 years ago, I really wanted to travel the world. My husband really wanted to work. And after a very thoughtful negotiation, we agreed that I would travel the world on my own for a year, and he would stay home and work. And it's about a year's worth of wonderful adventures.
Oops.
come to, what would happen, what would come to me. And its impact on our marriage, which was pretty delicious. We realized we were together because we wanted to be, and not because we couldn't get along without each other. And we ended a lot closer than before.
Marriage goals. That's what I have to say. Marriage goals. You make it great.
And to come back to what you were saying. So here I am with MCI, and the two of us now in our 70s, and we're growing. We're maturing as married couples, individually, but especially in our relationship. We're less afraid to open our hearts wide.
Yeah, that's amazing. I just want to relay this comment from Pat, who's just written, I've recently been diagnosed with MCI, and listening to this song has been the first time I've managed to smile at my predicament. Thank you. So the impact is amazing. We have another question from Grant, who says, my wife said in the early stages, it was like her head was in a fishbowl. How does your headspace feel?
Mostly it feels exactly the same, except when I do something like yesterday. I went swimming. I put in my swim bag, my fins, my suit, my cap, and I put my purse on top. I went to get this bag on the way back to the locker room, and everything was there but my purse. And I looked under the bleachers and I looked everywhere. I could not find my purse. And my heart sunk. Oh my God, my identification, blah, blah, blah. And finally I looked down and my purse was on my shoulder.
Right.
So headspace, you know what? I'd be more interested in asking that person back, what is having your head in a fishbowl like? Because that's not my experience.
Right. Yeah, I guess it's different for everyone. I want to point out that thank you so much, Leah, for sharing your story. We've posted the link to the song, which is bringing smiles to a lot of people. So spread the love and the message. That's wonderful that you have shared that with us, and we have the opportunity to, we'll link to it also when we publish this on Being Patient. But thank you so much, Leah, for joining us. It's been wonderful to talk to you.
Tell people to get as far as the chorus. The chorus is what's hilarious.
I promise. I'm sorry I didn't keep it up as long, but I promise. Everyone hear that, go to the chorus. It's amazing. I also want to bring up that we're really focused on MCI this month. We're going to have Emily Palillo, who is a UCSF doctor who is a specialist in MCI. She's joining us Friday, October 13th. At 12 p.m. Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern time. Please sign up for this talk if you're interested. As always at Being Patient, we like to have people diagnosed and their perspective, as well as expert opinions. And so Emily's going to join us and talk about that early stage of diagnosis and how to tell normal memory loss versus when you're entering into MCI. Sign up for our newsletter. If you haven't already done so, you will have a list of these upcoming talks. They're really meant for all of you. Send us questions. We love to hear from you. Thanks everyone for joining us, and we'll see you next time. And thank you so much, Leah, for joining us.